Okay, we will start the first lectures. We discuss what is the Android. So mobile devices will replace regular general purpose computers, and this is more like an obvious end for the smartphones. The only problem that people now worry about it is the power consumptions, which you cannot deploy heavy computation on the smartphone that can take all the charge from your batteries, and you have to always recharge your smartphone. But there is a lot of research about lightweight computation algorithms that can do the same things as you run it when you run these algorithms that require a heavy computation on the general purpose computers. Once you have the smartphone, you will have a set of hardwares all together. It's like a general purpose computers. You need an operating systems. And these operating systems need to run to make sure all these hardware are communicating with each other to serve you as an end user for the smartphone. So you want to take a pictures, you need to use the hardware of the cameras to take a pictures, and then you store it on the file. So you need what we call an operating systems that can respond to your call as an end user and transfer this call from end user to take a picture to a system call where it can fire some kind of hardware settings to take really pictures and store it in the files. Android, based on the definition of the Wikipedia, it's a mobile operating systems that developed by the Googles. And it's run on the smartphones, tablet, watches, and TV. And nowadays, we have a smart TVs and where the Android operating system is running. Now, you will see that Samsung, for example, Samsung TV, they developed their own version for the smartphone, for the Android, for the TVs. And also, if you have Samsung phone, Samsung, they not always, every time you have a new version of Android, is, for example, if you have now a Samsung, the latest one, doesn't mean you will have Android 10 running on that smartphone. Because Samsung, they need to take this is an open source operating system. It's very dangerous to take a new release of open source operating system and deploy it in your smartphone. So the Samsung, they need to look at this operating system, make sure all the hackers' doors are closed, and optimize this version to be really running on the smartphone from Samsung. And they optimize the Android version to really run up in the optimal way using the hardware of the Samsung. So you might have, for example, I have Galaxy Tablet 7, Android 5 is running there. I cannot upgrade even to Android 6 or 7 because that's where the Samsung, they say this hardware can optimally used with Android 5, for example. So every year there is a new version of Androids, and they use names like KitKat, Marshmallow, Oreo, Pies, and the latest one in Android 10 in 2019. I'm not sure, this is the beginning of 2020. We will most likely see 3 or 4 versions within this year maybe. Now, Android is based on Java. That's why Java programming is very essential for a computer science students, because there's many things in our real life, it's actually built based on Java. So Android apps, develop apps for Android operating systems, you need to use Java, and recently they are support Kotlin, and some university, they start adopting, teaching Android Studio, developing app using Kotlin. Now, if you running the Java standalone without using the Android mobile development, you run on the Java virtual machines that you install the Java in your general purpose computers, and you run the Java virtual machine, the standard one. But Dalvik is the special Java virtual machine, is designed and optimized for the mobile devices. Now, Android SDK, standard development kits, contains a lot of rich application programmable interface, we call it APIs, that help us to develop apps professionally. Now, Android is the #1 in the worldwide as an operating system. We know that if you have Apple's, you have iOS operating system. It's very restricted. It's not open source by Apple organizations. And we have more than over 1 million apps around us. And every time a new company or a group of team of computer science students, they group to each other, they develop an app for the university. Last time the students in computer science, they develop an app to help new admitted students in the computer science to navigate the maps, locate the location of the rooms and all of that. And recently, York University, they developed an app for security purposes. Okay? So there's no limitations on developing an app using an Android Studio because it's an open source and you have a lot of resources online. If you go, for example, now on the YouTube and just type how to program an app using Android Studio, you will see a lot of videos, and also you will see a lot of resources, text resources, and there's a lot of textbook even about how to develop the apps. Android operating system is based on Linux kernels, not Linux operating system. There's a difference. And we don't need to know too much details on this one. The only important here about this slide is, you know, when you are working with Android operating systems, you are actually equipped with a lot of ready-made packages that can help you. For example, here the libraries about SQLite. So you can even create a database in your apps, and you can fire SQL statements to fetch some data. There is a library for a media framework. So you can work with the videos, decode the videos, process the videos in your app. You have a lot of libraries that are ready for you to use. And Dalvik is the virtual machine that is for the Android Studio. Now, the latest version of Android Studio is 3.5.3. You can go to the website and download this and work with your machine. If you don't need to set up the environment, it's your decisions. But there's an issue here. It's different from the clips. Android Studio, there is a way to immigrate once you finalize the app in your local machine, and you want, for example, to send this app to your friend. And now, if your friend work with different version, he will see a lot of errors. Okay? So you and your partner should have the same version of the Android to be able to move the app between you. Now, if you would like to work with the version that is installed on the lab, we are working actually too much, 3.1.4. That is the one installed on the labs. If you implement the virtual box, okay, you will have this version already inside the virtual box. Now, for what if you say what I recommend, I work with the latest one on my machine. I don't care about the labs because I'm not the students who are going to develop the labs. Okay, I'm not working the team on the partners. Now, in the textbook, if you look at some pages here in the beginning, they ask you also how to save the your work. I don't remember where is it. Yes, yes, yes. Maybe in the yes, yes, here. Yeah, on the save your work on the page number 10. It tells you exactly what you really need if you need to move the app from one machine to another machine. Unfortunately, we don't have the, we have the VGA cables, but it's not, there's some error with it. I don't know. I will try to make it work again. Yeah, it will not. Okay. That's right. Yeah, it's not working. It's working. Yeah. It's not working, or I can show you what is the, even I look at the phone number to call the people, but I couldn't find it here. I will send an email. More hopefully, the next lecture we will be able to run this on the laptop, so we can switch to the Android Studio and show you how you can work with the Android Studio. Now, as you can see here, Android Studio is climbing up. It start being used by programmers. So the Visual Studio is the number one. As you can see, the clips is going down a little bit, and you have the Android Studio. And the good thing about Android Studio, it's very useful because it's combined all the necessary package all at once. You don't need to worry much about it. So when you develop the apps, especially Android SDK, it will be integrated with Android Studio. Now, Clips is used in 2030 advanced course, which is the course after this course. But Android Studio is climbing up as a recommended or a preferable ADI. Now, Android Studio use what we call a griddle, that is allow you to, once you build the app, you can run a compilation, this app all together as a script. So it will run everything for you. I still remember the early days when I used Eclipse to develop Android apps. It was a very painful experience to set up the environment to be able to develop an app using Eclipse, because you have to install a third-party plugins, and you have to make sure everything is coordinated in the right way to be able to run the apps. But with Android Studio, once you have it, everything is set up for you, and the griddle is a very good, flexible way to build your apps. So it will simplify your life. In the Android Studio, you have the Java IDE, you have an Android SDK, and also you will be able to generate Android virtual device emulators. And this Android virtual device emulators will allow you to test your app before deploying it on the real Android devices. Now, again, you can set up the virtual environments on your local machines. You install it and you work with it. There's some tutorials how to set up. There is a disadvantage about using the virtual box, which is you have to work with the real Android device to do the deployment. But there is a very large advantage is with using this virtual box, you develop with an environment exactly match the environment that you are working on the labs. Okay? How to set up and prepare your machine. Again, these are the Jackie tutorials. Will help you out step by step how to set up and develop an app using the VirtualBox virtual machine. Getting started with Android if you need more, because this course is about Java programming. It's not about make you a professional user to the Android Studio. We're going to use a little bit of Android Studio. We're going to use the Android Studio as a helping tools, because you don't need, or we don't need the students to spend a long time to develop an environment and make sure the environment is ready for him. If you have the Android Studio installed successfully, you are ready to develop an app using Java, because Android Studio will contain all the necessary packages and also will allow you to run the emulators to test your apps. Okay? So but if you need to know more about Android Studio, these are the links and official starter tutorials. You have the Stanford also course, which is CS1938, is also a video tutorials and materials that will help you to be a professional with the Android Studio. And I checked recently, Stanford, they start teaching Android Studio with Kotlin. So they are not moving, they already moved from Java. But you will find the archive course where they develop Android apps using Java. Now, we're supposed to switch to Android Studio and demonstrate to you how the Android Studio is working and also work with the Android Studio. So hopefully we can find the, I don't know. Anyway. Okay, I have prepared some, I think I have prepared some screenshots and put them on the slides as a backup plan in case of this is not working. But also, did anyone have HDMI cable? No one. I used to have one, but maybe in the office, and it's very linked to go back to the process. Let me just. We have the slides, so don't worry, but I will try one more, because this, if this is working, then everything will be okay. It's wrong. Okay, you don't have HDMI cable. Do you have VGA cables? Good. So in these slides, we have screenshots exactly what you need to do. So let me just try to switch to the laptop. Hopefully this will work, but might be the screen will be yellow or something because bins are not aligned correctly. Hoping. Oh, good. Okay. So let me go back. So you have, first of all, let me try to so we have the Android Studio installed. Android Studio, I can say that disadvantage, it's slow a little bit. It's not fast like Eclipse because you have many packages are all linked together to help you to develop an app. So as you can see, I have a big list of apps here that I work on. Now I can start a new Android Studio. It will ask me what is the application names. So I can say 01, because I have. As you can see, here you can make specifications for the company domains, which is the package file. So on this company domain, as you can see on the screen, is the screen visible for everyone? So maybe you can come to the beginning if you have problem. You have EECS1022.yorku.ca. So EECS1022, this is represent a folder inside my hard disk. Inside this folder, I have another folder which is called YorkU. Inside this folder, there is another folder called CA. And this will be in reverse. And in such a way, I organize my work. Now, for example, for you, you might say, I will organize per semesters. So this is a winter 20. Then period, I have ECS 1022. Now, I don't need .yorku or .ca. So how you organize your work, you specify it on the company domains. Here is the actually, where's the location on my hard disk. And these are how you support. You need C++ support, you need Kotlin support. This is recently. We don't need anything. We're going to do it standard with Java. Next, here this is a very important step. When you develop the app, sometimes you develop the app for a specific Android operating system, or what they call it Android APIs. As you can see, even the Android Studio here, it's saying it's recommended to develop an app that match ice cream sandwich, which is the Android Studio 4 operating system 4.0.3. And if you develop an app using API 15, will be able to run it on the later operating systems. Okay? So it's give us the recommendation. We're not running for a TV or anything else. So we just keep things same here. Next. Now it's the time to pick up what kind of template we're going to work with. So in the most of labs, we're going to have an empty activity. But there's some Android Studio project, we're going to use no activity. Right now, we're going to use an empty activity. Next. It gives us the choice to name out what is the activity name, what is the layout name. If you install Android Studio with the latest version, you will not have this choice. It's always going to be main activity and activity underscore main. Here in this, I installed the previous version of Android Studio. So the same version that is used by your labs. So this version is 3.1.4, the one that I am using it in my machine. I'm not using VirtualBox. I'm just installing the old version. Okay? Then I can say, I will leave it main activity. I'm not going to change it. Here we can, in the TextBox, is telling you, you change it. If you follow the steps on the TextBox, you have to change it, I think, to empty activity. Then you have to put it 0 activity. You have to change this from main activity to 0 activity. Okay? And as you can see, once I change it to 0 activity, the activity underscore 0 is changed the same thing. And then I can click finish. Now as you can see, the Android Studio start building our app. Now let me go back to the while it's finished. So in these slides, I will post it. It will contain actually steps how you create the apps, similar to what I did just now in the laptops. I just take a screenshot and save it for you for a reference and also for me as a backup in case of this is not working. This all here for you. Now we will see how we're going to integrate the I2C.jar in our project. In all the labs that you need to develop during this course, you need to link this jar files with your apps. How I'm going to do this? There is the steps on these slides to show you exactly how you're going to do this. Even sometimes on the lab test, when you have the lab test and you start opening Android Studio to do some programming, to answer the questions, you need to do these steps. So you need to master how to link the package. So let me go back to the laptop. Okay. So this is the screen on the laptop once I finish. As you can see here, try to double click. As you can see, we have the package name, which is exactly where the things are stored in the reverse order. CA, we have the folder called CA. Inside it, there is another folder, your Q. Inside it, there is EECS1022. And inside it, we have a 01 apps, which is exactly. This is the package where every class we create inside this app will be stored in. So if you go to the did I put a shortcut here? No, no shortcut. Okay. Yes, yeah. So these are Android Studio apps. All of them will be here. This is the 01 app we create. This is actually the structures of the files. All these are files are created by Android Studio Automatic for us. Now inside the app, you will see there is a source. Inside it, there is a main, and there is a Java folder. Inside there is a Java folder. We have the packages. We have CA folders, your Q, then EECS1022. Then inside this, we have 01 package. Inside it, there is a class called 0 activity. What is inside this 0 activity if you open it? This is the code inside this Java file. The same code, you will have it here inside Java. So this is the code. This is the public class extended from app compact activity. Okay, there's no inheritance on this course, but this is the default apps class created for us, allow us to run the app. If you look at back here, you will see that this is the view. Initial app contains hello world, text view. You can right now simply run the app. If I ask to run the app, it will give me all the virtual machine that I install in my Android Studio. If I have some connected real Android device, it will also appear here, and I can use this real Android device to develop or deploy my app. So right now I'm using a virtual one. I can press OK, and it will take time to prepare the app for running. So this is a virtual Android app, and inside it you will see now we will have the hello world. It's just simply the default app. Now, depend on your machine. If your machine is fast, maybe this process will not take too much time. Okay. Now, if you run the virtual Android device once, don't close it, keep it running, and continue developing the app. Once you finish, you also run. So all this process of preparing the virtual device is already done for you. You don't need to do it every time. Still processing. Now, as you can see here in the buttons, the Griddle building and running process, you can expand it even and see what is there on the building process. Now, if you install the old version of Android Studio, every time will give you an option to update. So do not update if you install the old version. And also even on the labs, okay, you will see that whenever you open the Android Studio in the lab, it will give you a notification you have to update the app. Now it's installing the Android package. As you can see on the buttons, give you steps. Installing the Android package on the virtual device to be able to run it. And this is just simply a default app. It's very slow process, and you can see here it's starting on the machine, and you can see here the hello. I will keep this running. I'm not going to close it because I'm going to use it later on. Now I will go back to link the library to this. I don't know where I stored the library. Now I have to see. I can go again to the Rahmani website, maybe. This is the TextBox. This is the TextBox website. You have the package here. You download the package. You copy the package from here. You go to the libraries. You can see here, you go to the 0 apps, then inside it there is a folder called libraries. You put the package inside this. Now the next steps is to go to Android Studio, to go to the, you can see in the Android Studio you have Android as a project preview here. You have the Android preview, you have the project preview. In the project preview you will see here the folder structures on your hard disk. Inside it you will see the libraries. Now you go to the file, go to the settings, go to the project structures, then go back here from the file, select project structures, then you have the apps, go to dependency. Inside the dependency you click plus sign, jar dependency, and then you go to the library, you find the i2c.jar file, you click OK. This file now is linked to your projects. All these steps that I just did is actually on the slide. So if you go home, you can see step by step how you link i2c.jar to your projects. And this i2c.jar contains many APIs and some ready-made methods. You will be using these methods for the labs 1, 2, 3, up to lab number 5. Now, this is the website. We download the jar, then we copy the jar inside file structures, in the apps, dependency, plus, and you link the jar to your projects. All these steps are inside the jar. Now, let us look at the project structures for any Android apps. What is actually these files on the left side that we see once we develop an app? You will have what we call Android manifest.xml. Inside this file, there is a description for all the component of Android apps. It's ready by the Android at runtime system, and we read it at runtime to execute. So we're not going to go to Android manifest.xml and modify it in any of the labs. But it's good to know that inside the Android manifest, it will find all the description about the component of your apps. And once you run the app at runtime, the Android Studio will go and read this manifest for you. Now, this is where most of the work will be done, inside the Java folders. inside the Java folder, which is inside the source / Java, so it's inside another folder. But once you have the Android view on the top here, Android view, you will have the Java. As you can see, there is a 3 subfolders. There is a Java, which is the com.example.ecs1022, and then .0, which is the folder where all the classes you develop will be stored. There is Android test, and there is a test directories. In this course, we're going to work with the test directory, and also we're going to work with the Java directory. Android test, we're not going to work with it. It's for advanced if you want to make a test scenario for your app. Now, inside also the file structures, you will have the resources directory. Most of the files inside the resources directory are .xml files. And as you can see, we have a drawable directories. And you're going to use these drawable in the first apps to store images. So if you app going to use some images, the link for this will be inside a drawables directories. And we have a layout directories. A layout directory, inside it, as you can see, we have activity_0.xml file. This layout file will be responsible about describing the user interface items that you add to the app. So if you add buttons, you have text field, you have edit text field, you have a display text, you have a scroll bar, or whatever is you adding to your app as a user interface items, it will be stored inside the layout.xml. And inside the layout XML, you will find the XML code describe actually the appearance and how this user interface item will appear inside the apps. Also, you can see there is a values folders. You're going to use this during the lab 0. When you develop the app 0, you're going to use the colors and also the string, and we have the styles. The style is allow us to develop a style that control most of the user interface items. So we don't need to go and visit each user interface items and change their properties in terms of the styles and appearance. We can define a style, and then we use this style for most of the users, make it more easier for us. A string is allow us to make our app more adaptive for multi-language. So you can define some string on different languages. You have string.xml to do this for you. So rather than fixing the value or the caption of the buttons on your apps, you can make this caption as a parameters. And then inside string.xml, you can change the value of this parameter based on the language. Now, this is a Griddle. We're not going to go to any of the Griddle scripts. This is a Griddle script offered by Android Studio. Once you create your apps, it will be staying the same, okay? But I believe for the students who are going to install the early version of Android Studio, they need to fix something on that so to be able to run with the newer versions. But anyway, you Google it and you will find it out. Now, to set up a virtual machine or a virtual device that can run your app, you just, as you saw, just simply run the app. It will give you all the virtual device that you can run. If you don't want to set up a virtual devices, the only option for you is to connect your real Android device to your machine, and you can download the informations or the apps on the real device. Right now. Run, you pick the virtual, and then you will see the apps. Some Android terminologies, it's what we call is an activity. Activity is actually the screen. When you run the app, this screens with all the user interface on it, is called activity. It's linked to an activity class, as you saw in the development. And anything you put it inside is called a view. And this appears on the screen of activity. And the view, there is a widget. And this is a graphical user interface. And could be the widget buttons, text field, view text field, you put it. We're going to drag and drop this graphical user and put it inside your display. A widget is, we call it a view objects. And it allows us to interact with the users. Now, we could have buttons, checkboxes, text view, or edit text, and etc. from the widgets. Now, normally, when you organize your app, you try to put these widgets together on what we call a view groups. You group them together to control the positions, the locations, the locks of these widgets inside your apps. You can have a group within a group, everything on the hierarchical structures. Now, to be able to sort out the widgets all, you need what we call a layout managers. And this layout manager, we have many layout managers offered by the Android Studio. We have layout, linear layout, where you organize the widget linearly or horizontally, verticals, or horizontals. Tables, where you organize in the tabular format relative to each other. So whenever you change the one widget, the other one will be relatively changed to it. Or absolute locations, so the buttons and the view, the graphical user interface are fixed locations. It will not change if you rotate the app or the tablet or something like that. And there is also a frame that is dynamically generate the widget inside the frame. There is also a list view, scroll items, or the grid view. As you can see, this is a different layout sample of them, linear verticals, and you have a relatives to each other's list widgets, and also the grid. But the ones that we're going to work with for all these semesters, it's called the constraint layout. Constraint layout is the default one offered by the Android Studio, and you're going to work with the default one. Okay? And this, all the item would be located inside this layout managers, and you cannot have outside this layout managers any widgets. And you can also add another layout managers inside this. Like, for example, you're going to see in some apps you develop this semester, you have the constraint layout managers, and inside it you put a linear layout managers. Okay? So you can put a layout manager inside another layout managers. So you can have a constraint layout manager, inside it you have a tabular layout managers. Okay? Or a list layout managers. Everything in hierarchical levels. Now, also there is Android Studio terminology. Events. When you have the app and there is a buttons inside the app. So the end user will press these buttons. If pressing these buttons or scrolling down or swipe your fingers or touching to any things, it will generate or fire things. And this we call it an event. It's an action appear when the user interact with the widgets. And now how the user can interact with the widgets, it's already default and programmed for us. So you can see that when you have the buttons inside your app, there is a way for the user to interact with the buttons. For example, you can press these buttons. Is that right? You can, once the user is just putting a finger on the top of the buttons, not pressing it, you can give a hint message. Okay? So you can interact with the widgets in a certain way. It's already programmed and designed for us. If you need this functionality, you link this action with some Java methods you develop. So once the user presses the buttons, you do some actions. You print a message for the users. You start browsing to see the image, to send a message, whatever is it. They have also an action bar. Sometimes some apps, we have an actions bar common on the top. You can select from them. And there is a notification area. Sometimes some apps, you see there is a notification area always in the bottom, some of them on the middle of the screen. Okay, so there is a notification area. You can set up it where you notify the users about that. Now, in this course, most likely we're going to interact with the 3 most common widgets that we're going to work with. The one that is used for the labeling, which is the text view. And this text view, we're going to use it to just display a message to the user. What is the message that we're going to display to the user? We have initial message, we design it for it, but inside the programming we can change this message. We can grab this widget inside the Java programming and change the message during the execution of the app. And as you can see on the palette of the widgets, it's called text view, and this on the Android lingo we have also, it's called text view, because now we have the view and we have the programming from the Java. So in this case, the Android is called a text view, and the Java is also called a text view. And once you add any widgets to your app, the app will give an ID, and this ID is unique for any widgets. So you can grab this widget in the Java programming and interact with this because it's a unique. Okay, we have the text box. Text box, it's a little bit different. Text box, it's used for the user to input something for our app. For example, we ask the user to put his height, his weight. Okay, we need the text box. And now we see the difference. In the palette of the Android Studio, you see it as a plain text. We name it in the theory as a text box. But on the Java, you have edit text. So you have to be familiar with this kind of names. So text box, plain text, edit text, all of them have the same issue. But where you are using it, if you are programming and you want to interact with the text box, you have to use edit text, because this is where the name of the Java class is. The Java expert, they name it as a text, edit text. But on the Android Studio, when you design your layout, they call it a plain text. Okay? The third one, which is the button, is the same thing. It's on the Android lingo is buttons. On the Android also is a buttons. You drag and drop inside your view. Now, how to build and design the app's user interface? All these next slides is actually from the textbook, which is related to Android Studio, app D0, which is you're supposed to do it by yourself. And this is the first class. I go over these just to highlight more information. I know this is the first class. Most of you will be surprised what is this. But once you visit the labs, once you start to install the Android Studio and work with the D0, you will be familiar with everything. And this slide will be used by you as a reference to go over it. Whenever you design anything inside your app, you go to the what we call activity_main.xml. Now, if you install the new version, it will be always activity_main. If you store the previous version, the same version on the labs, you will be able to change it with any name you like. Okay? And as you can see, you drag, drop from the palettes any widget you like. You put it inside the view, and you can interact with the parameters here. There is 2 ways to do this. We're not going to do the hard way, which is the code way, where once we generate the apps, we're going to go to the Java and learn how we can generate the Java graphical user interface. No, we're going to build all the interface we like on the apps, and we're going to use XML. Okay? And you can also, in the second way, XML, you can drag and drop, or you can go to the XML and type by yourself. most of the time you will find it convenient to drag and drop and change the parameters or the probabilities from the list of the probabilities without going to the XML and change it. But there is some information we need to know it about XML. It's very essential and elementary. So as you can see, let me just go to the last 5 minutes. Okay. Okay. So I will double click here on the XML. It allows me to see the view. This is the view that you have. You can here, for example, see the blueprint with the design. The blueprint is exactly how it's look on the real device, but let us always stick with the design. As you can see, I have the hello world. I can delete this. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. For example, in the D0, we ask you to drag and drop the buttons inside the design. This is the buttons. We drag it and drop. I just make it a little bit large so everybody can see this. So in the left side here, you have the probabilities about this buttons. One of these probabilities, as you can see here on the tree, component tree, it's the constraint layout is the one on the top, big one. And inside this constraint layout, we put all the views we like. All the views we like, we put it inside this constraint layout. Now, you can just simply hold this green circle and link it to the top. This will make sure that the button is constrained to the top of your app. Or you can go to this screen. This screen will allow you to do all this job by just clicking on this. Now, if you would like, now this button is constrained to the top in all the directions on the screen. You can, in the D0, will ask you to add more buttons, link them together, relatively align them together, so when you do rotations of your cell phone to the landscape, still the buttons are in the view and well organized. Now, there's two arrows. You can go back and forth between the full list of the parameters. You can control the background of the buttons, and you have the colors are red, green, blue, range from 0, 0. For example, this is the black background. You can control the text. I will switch back to the slide just to show you that all these informations that you're going to do on the D0 is already on the slide. So these slides will consider for you as a reference. So you can see here, this is the activity main.xml, and you have the design view. This is the text view. This is the hello world. And you can do the constraint. This is the two arrows. You can switch between them to see the full parameters list. So this is the full parameter list. You can constraint. Whenever you have, this is the constraint layout. You can see the constraint layout, and you see how they are constrained. You can constrain the buttons. As you can see, once you start the apps, the buttons is already linked to the left and right. Okay. So I will stop right now, but please look at this slide once I post it. The materials inside it is there. And next lectures, I will start to highlight some issues about this. And at that time, I hope you will gain more experience on the Android Studio.